Harriet Tubman's True Journey, the Underground Railroad Revealed. Picture this. It is midnight. The woods are alive with sounds, but the footsteps you hear are not your own. Behind you, hounds sniff the air, men armed with rifles are searching, and the only thing between you and death is your courage. Now imagine that you are not just running for your own life, but carrying the lives of a dozen others. That was Harriet Tubman's reality, not once, but more than 13 times. Most people know her as the conductor of the Underground Railroad, but that title is too small. Tubman was a strategist, a spy master, a leader who outsmarted enemies far more powerful than herself. Her life is not only the story of one woman's escape, but a blueprint of resistance, courage, and freedom. Today, we reveal the true journey of Harriet Tubman, the woman they called Moses, and the secret war she waged against slavery. To understand Tubman's strength, we must first understand the chains she was born into. Harriet Tubman, born Araminta Minty Ross in 1822, entered a world where human beings were treated as property. She was one of 11 children. As a child, she was hired out to other households, forced to care for babies, trap muskrats in icy rivers, and carry loads beyond her small frame. One day, while trying to protect another slave, she was struck in the head by a 2-pound weight thrown by an overseer. The injury left her with lifelong seizures, blinding headaches, and sudden visions. In those visions, she saw freedom. She saw hope. She believed God was speaking to her, guiding her toward a greater destiny. She once said, "I prayed to God to make me strong and able to fight, and that's what I have prayed for ever since." Life gave her pain, but that pain forged her faith and her will. She became an expert in navigating forests, rivers, and the stars. Every path, every hidden route, every tree line became her training ground. Skills learned in bondage became the tools of liberation. By 1849, Harriet's life reached a breaking point. News came that she would be sold south. To slaves in Maryland, that meant no return. Families torn apart, no hope of reunion. It was, in effect, a death sentence. Faced with this, Harriet decided she would not wait for chains to tighten. She said, "There are two things I have a right to, liberty or death. If I cannot have one, I will have the other." One night, she slipped away. Alone, armed only with courage, faith, and her memory of the stars, she walked nearly 90 miles north. She moved mostly at night, hiding by day, listening for hounds, avoiding strangers. Every rustle in the brush could have been a patrol. Every farm she passed could have betrayed her. And then, at last, she crossed into Pennsylvania, into free soil. The moment overwhelmed her. She later recalled, "When I found I had crossed that line, I looked at my hands to see if I was the same person. There was such a glory over everything. I felt like I was in heaven." But freedom felt empty without her family. Her husband, her parents, her siblings, they were all still enslaved. Tubman made a vow that would shape the rest of her life. "I was free, and they should be free." Harriet Tubman's escape was just the beginning. Soon she became part of a network that would define American resistance, the Underground Railroad. It was not a real railroad. It was a hidden system of safe houses, guides, and routes, run by abolitionists, Quakers, free blacks, and escaped slaves. In Philadelphia, Tubman connected with William Still, a man who recorded stories of fugitives, creating a secret archive of resistance. She worked with Thomas Garrett, a Quaker who risked his fortune and freedom to shelter escapees. Tubman became a conductor, guiding passengers along the lines. But her work was more dangerous than most. In 1850, the Fugitive Slave Act made it legal for slave catchers to seize black people even in free states. Bounties were placed on Tubman's head. Slaveholders described her as 5 feet tall, dark-skinned, with a scar on her forehead. Posters warned she was dangerous, cunning, and must be stopped. Instead of stopping, she adapted. She stretched her missions into Canada, beyond the reach of American law. Over the next decade, she returned again and again to Maryland, rescuing her brothers, her parents, and dozens of strangers. In total, she personally guided around 70 people to freedom. Through her guidance, hundreds more escaped. Her friends called her Moses, the biblical leader who led his people out of bondage. Slaveholders called her a menace. Both were right. Tubman's genius was her strategy. Every mission she led was a careful, calculated operation. She often traveled in winter when long nights offered more cover. She chose Saturday nights, knowing that runaway notices wouldn't be published until Monday. She used disguises, an old woman shuffling with a cane, a man walking briskly, a washerwoman carrying laundry. Observers said she could change her face so completely that even people who knew her walked past without recognition. Music became her code. She sang spirituals like "Wade in the Water" to warn escapees to hide in rivers, erasing their scent from dogs. She used the hoot of an owl as a signal in the woods, and she carried a pistol. It was not only for defense against hunters, but also for those in her group who faltered. She knew hesitation could doom them all. To one man who threatened to turn back, she raised her pistol and said firmly, "You'll be free or die." No one ever turned back again. In her own words, "I was conductor of the Underground Railroad for 8 years, and I can say what most conductors can't say. I never ran my train off the track, and I never lost a passenger." Her missions earned her respect and fear in equal measure. She brought her parents north, rescued her brothers, and freed strangers who became family. She was Moses. But her war did not end with the railroad. When the Civil War erupted, Harriet Tubman saw her chance to strike slavery at its root. She offered her services to the Union. At first, she worked as a nurse, tending to wounded soldiers and sick refugees. But soon, her true talents came to light. She became a scout and a spy. She organized networks of informants, mapping rivers, plantations, and enemy movements. Her intelligence proved invaluable. Her most famous mission came in June 1863, the Combahee River Raid. Tubman personally guided Union gunboats through waters laced with Confederate mines. The raid destroyed plantations, crippled supplies, and most importantly, freed over 750 enslaved people in one night. It was one of the largest mass liberations of the war, and Harriet Tubman, a former slave, was at its center. She had gone from fugitive to military leader. Even after the war, Tubman's fight continued. She became an advocate for women's suffrage, speaking alongside Susan B. Anthony and other leaders. She argued that her service in war proved women's right to equality. If women could endure slavery, risk their lives, and fight for freedom, then they had earned the right to vote. Despite her service, she lived much of her life in poverty. She struggled to secure a military pension despite her critical role in the Union victory. Yet she used what little she had to build a refuge. In 1908, she established the Harriet Tubman Home for the Aged in Auburn, New York, to care for the elderly and poor. She died in 1913, surrounded by those she had inspired, leaving behind a legacy larger than life. Harriet Tubman was more than a conductor. She was a strategist, a spy, a liberator, and a lifelong activist. Her life shows what one determined person can achieve, even against impossible odds. Her story is not just history. It is a lesson, a reminder that courage, faith, and determination can tear down even the strongest chains. So I ask you, which part of Tubman's true journey speaks to you the most? The fearless rescuer, the cunning strategist, the wartime leader, or the fighter for justice even in old age? Share your thoughts, because remembering Harriet Tubman means carrying forward her fight for dignity and freedom. This is the true journey of Harriet Tubman, Moses of her people,